You're listening to The Coaching Divas, a podcast for everyone navigating the twists and turns of corporate life.
Follow along as we chat through common workplace situations and extend the coach approach to help you handle them with ease.
We offer a cross-sectional view that spans generations, positions, workplaces, and lifestyles.
We're your hosts,
Claudia Jones,
Daniela Velkovic,
and Misha Jethba, and we are
The Coaching Divas.
Welcome back to The Coaching Divas. Today, we're talking about the leadership identity crisis and how a lot of smart leaders are out here shape-shifting from meeting to meeting. In one meeting, they're the strategic visionary for senior leadership. In the next, they're the supportive coach for their team. Then suddenly, they're the collaborative peer trying not to step on anyone's toes. Adaptability is part of leadership, but somewhere along the way, adaptability can turn into identity drift. Because everyone thinks they have a leadership brand until someone asks, so what are you actually known for? In this episode, we're unpacking why so many leaders subconsciously shapeshift depending on the room they're in, and how you can stay flexible in your style while anchoring yourself in something deeper, your core values, beliefs, and leadership identity. Because adaptability is a skill, but losing yourself isn't. Let's get into it.
Wow, that's I don't know. This topic really is. It feels ambiguous. It feels challenging, but at the same time, it feels very close to home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share a bit about me. I've kind of thought of myself as the leader, and I have a brand, but I have been in a situation where that started being influenced by the leadership around me, and I started leaning into some of, I'll call it, the toxic traits that my leader was demonstrating and adding into my own. And I went through a bit of, I used expression crisis because, when you use the expression, I don't recognize myself, that was for me the moment when I kind of went, who am I as a leader?
And what triggered that non-recognition?
I would see something and I'd go, who said that? In my inside. Or I'd respond to something in a way that just wasn't my style. And it felt uncomfortable and it felt weird and it just wasn't right. Or I'd be told you should take this action. And that was not the way I would ever take that action. Or a comment would be made, why didn't you look at it from this standpoint? And all of that implies that environment wouldn't even allow me to be the natural leader that I want to be, because there was that constant judgment and an evaluation coming through the lens of my own leader of what was important. One of the things that I've realized over the years is my values drive my leadership style. And so my values also drive my adaptability and my mindset, understanding what's going on in the room. And I could say that I've worked that muscle over the years to make sure that it's right. But I'd also say that even before I ever landed with that particular leader, when I was a team lead working in consulting, I always viewed it as I want to create space for my team to do what they need to do, and I will offer guidance. But that was my core. So it was almost, going through that experience with that one leader, I actually made a choice consciously to self-exclude at a point in time. Or I spent 2 years with that group and I said, I'm out. And I quit. Because that was for me that dramatic shift to say, I'm in a crisis, I need to get out. How does that resonate with you guys?
It's interesting as you share that. I'm actually thinking of when did my crisis happen or how did it show up? And it showed up differently. I caught myself in a pattern of tons of meetings all the time, back to back, 9 to 5. And this went on for some time. I didn't catch it quite quickly, but I found myself every night as I was trying to go to sleep, I would be replaying almost every meeting in my head. Not every single one of them, but almost all of them. And it was constantly okay, what happened? What did I say? How did I say that? And it was almost like I was doing the replay to figure out, hey, how did I actually show up in that meeting? Am I okay with how I showed up? And I labeled it at the time as just overthinking, like, oh, I'm overthinking this. Like, oh my God, I need to shut my brain off and just go to sleep. And it took me some time. I can't even tell you definitively how much time, but it went on for a while, where I was in that pattern. And then finally I was like, I kind of got shook out of it, of like, why do I keep replaying all of these meetings? Like, what am I actually looking for here? And I realized what I was analyzing after the fact was my own behavior. I wasn't looking for what were the action items of the meeting. I wasn't looking for somebody else's tone. I wasn't looking at, hey, this person said this and it really irritated me. Like, all of that was rolling off of me like butter. But it was constantly this self-critique of, oh, Misha, you could have said that better. Oh, you didn't sound really smart when you said that. Ooh, that might have come out as a tone or with attitude. And I was criticizing my own contributions. And I realized I was doing that because subconsciously I was trying to figure out, how are you showing up and are you aligned to how you're showing up? Which then spiraled me into the, wait, how do I want to show up? What do I want to be perceived as? Which goes kind of to that branding of, what are you known for? And that was kind of the kick that I needed. And what happened was, I think I slowly started just kind of tuning the replay out and thought more in the moment of, okay, Misha, don't just react. Take a second, listen to what's happening in the room, formulate your answer, make sure you're grounded in it, and then engage. And I think that's where like my shift happened. And I started to realize, okay, I don't have to show up one way for every single meeting. I can dial it up here. I could dial it down here. I can shift to the right over there. And that's where I think it kind of clicked for me, but the crisis showed up differently.
I would say for me, it was when I was, first given leadership positions. And again, you have these ideals as what a leader should be like, right? I should be in charge. I should know everything. I should kind of get all this done. And so I found I was one person when I was managing up, and I was a totally different person managing down. But those two people didn't seem to talk to each other.
That's interesting.
Because I could, sit into the management reading, be all agreeable to what was being said, not really challenged too much. Yep, I'm part of the team. Let's get going. This is all really great. But then when I had to turn around and then give direction to my team as to, what the expectations were, I found I wasn't able to answer all their questions. So I was playing the game up, but I certainly wasn't meeting the expectations of how to take those challenges and actually get the work done. And so I found I was a good leader because I was, part of the boys club or whatever you want to call it. But my team was lost. And I thought, well, why the heck am I that person? Yep. Because I've always been a person who asks a lot of questions. If I don't understand something, I'm not afraid to say, can you clarify that for me? But I wasn't doing that going up. And I think because I was afraid of looking like I didn't know what I was doing, perhaps, or I was looking insecure or unsure or non-confident. Something was going on with me that I didn't want to demonstrate that. Maybe, thinking about it now, maybe I was afraid to demonstrate that, do I really belong with this group of people? So I kind of put a bit of a facade up. May or may not have fooled them, but I certainly wasn't able to fool my team because I couldn't give them the direction that they needed and kind of set the goal for them going forward. So that's when you kind of realize, who the heck am I? Like, why am I not showing up as I should for all the different groups that I have to deal with as a leader?
Yep. I resonate with that a lot. When you shared that, immediately, when I first became a manager, I had this, and I called it porcelain doll syndrome, that's self-coined term, where I literally felt like I had to be this perfect, pristine porcelain doll, shiny all the time, good from every angle, solid, strong, whether it was with my leadership. And it was always the yes, agreeable style. And then with the team, it was this stoic, I can handle any question, come at me, it's totally fine. And, listening to you explain how you experienced it, Claudia, makes me also think that if you are a woman, it's slightly amplified from the leadership upward perspective. Because I think women are more likely to experience the thoughts of, or the second guessing themselves of, oh, should I ask this question? I don't want to be perceived as dumb or not as smart as the others in the room. And so we hesitate. We sometimes stay quiet. We will just agree and say, yep, okay, I can get behind that. Even though in your head, you're like, oh, this seems kind of wrong. And we should probably look under these couple rocks, but you don't want to ruffle the feathers. And so I think it's almost it's like an amplifier. It's like an add-on to everyone has a leadership crisis, but I do think women will have it a little bit tougher if they've got some of those self-inflicting thoughts that then hold them back because they don't want to be perceived a certain way at the leadership table.
Yeah. I think, just to add to that a little bit, Misha, I think at the end of the day, I didn't want to cast any doubt in especially male leadership's minds that I didn't belong to be there. I wanted them to know that I did belong to be there, but by maybe asking questions which, well, everyone knows the answer to that. Well, I don't. So why didn't I speak up, right?
Yeah. And what I really love is the way you opened it up. I had the conversations up, I had the conversations down, but I didn't have the conversations with myself between the two, right? Which it demonstrates it in my mind, it's a real chameleon challenge, right? It is the notion of you still want to be, and I feel like I should actually reframe it for myself. I felt like I've always been in that situation as well. From a project manager's perspective, I'm managing the steerco's commentary and thoughts, but then I have to tell the team execute based on whatever we have left. And it's always, yeah, we can handle it. But the reality is we can't because of whatever externalities are going on and amplification of it for us as females. I think the question I'd have for all of you is, for me, I had to learn how to find courage in just being okay with no question is stupid. And the keep it simple, stupid concept, the KISS concept, right? How do I simplify this for myself in the moment? And I will ask the questions if it's not simplified for me. That ended up being my working strategy. What did you guys lean on?
I haven't heard the KISS strategy in such a long time.
I still use it.
Thanks.
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Thank you for bringing it back. Yeah, that's great.
I love it, right?
Yeah, it speaks volumes. Keeping it simple.
I think for me, I've tried to reframe it in my own mind because I've definitely gone through okay, if I'm going to ask this question, it's going to come out stupid. Then at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, the replay is going to be like, oh, how many people in that room thought I was an idiot, think that I'm like incapable of doing my job, blah, blah, blah. And so what I started doing was reframing it in my mind first to be like, okay, Misha, you're asking this question because you need clarity or you need a gut check, you need someone to confirm your understanding, and there's nothing wrong with that. So first I started with the internal of, okay, Misha, get good with what you need and know that there's nothing wrong with it, then go and get it. And when I would go and get it, that's where I would kind of reframe or almost like set the context before, like I almost did like a layup on my question. And so some of the ways that would show up is I would say, hey, could someone just gut check me on this? Here's my understanding. Am I on the right path? And then what that did for me was it took the intensity down. I'm looking for a gut check. Everybody needs a gut check, right? Or I would say something like, we started the meeting with the objective of X. It feels like we're veering off a little bit. Do we want to pivot this conversation to that? And that was my very nice way of saying, hey guys, we're off topic. But I didn't want to come out as being, that very direct person and, being perceived as, really stringent and must stay on agenda. So I would pose it up as a question. And those were the ways that I would kind of pad. I think of it as like padding in my brain of like, this is how you're going to protect yourself, Misha? This is how you're not going to, stay up staring at your ceiling, thinking about all your meetings and how you said things and what you said, because you've done the pre-work to, one, in your mind, turn it into a belief that none of the things that you are about to ask for are wrong. And two, how you ask it is in line with your style. You want to stay collaborative. You don't want to be perceived as too direct or too rigid or things like that. And so it was that balance of creating the belief inside, but then aligning that belief in how I showed up as my style.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. And for me, quite honestly, I think I started having that conversation with myself. I eventually realized that that was the gap. Right. And so as I'm sitting in more leadership meetings, I'd be taking notes. And then just before the meeting would end, I would actually look at those notes with a different lens now. Now I'm looking at it and say, so if I'm speaking to my team lead, these are the type of questions they're going to be asking me. And from the notes I took, will I be able to answer them? So it kind of brings me back to when we were doing our coaching certification and we talked about the dance, right? How you have one dance with your management, a different dance with your peers, and another dance with the people that report into you. And I realized, I got to make sure I can do all three dances here. And having that conversation with myself, learning the new steps, being able to pivot, understanding that they're all, you call them environmental, cultural differences as it is with the different groups. And making sure I was able to answer or do the dance with all the different groups. And that helped me a lot. So I write extra little notes, little questions. And that way, I would not be afraid to ask the questions and feel comfortable leaving. Because I discovered too, once I asked those questions, a whole bunch of other questions would come up from other people in the meeting too. So I think I just needed to be that icebreaker to kind of get things going. So it helped. It helped.
And the other layer to all of this is we're not changing our values.
No.
In any of these situations. What we're also not changing is being able to represent our brand and what's important to us in the moment. But what we are adjusting is a way that we talk to our audience. And so the core of who we are isn't shifting. It is really around finding the right words and building that credibility with the appropriate audience. Well, coaches always talk about meet your audience where they're at, meet your team where they're at. And what really, if we had to bottom line, what does that look like? It means finding that commonality. So if you're working with a team of, in a global environment with multiple individuals, it's okay that perhaps some of them are going to come back to you and re-ask certain questions, and you as an individual may first time go, well, I already talked about it. But then it becomes a bit of almost, I'm going to use the expression, a bit of like an expectation. You know that they're going to come back and you're just going to meet them where they're at with the comment and the thought process. I'll ask you guys something here because there was a powerful exercise that I came across called the litmus test for leaders. 4 questions that we could be asking ourselves. What do people come to me for repeatedly? What decision do I make faster than others? What behavior do I refuse to tolerate? And what hill am I willing to die on professionally?
I'll be quite honest. I don't know if I like those 4 questions for litmus test because I think like with the litmus test, you're testing to see if something's just acidic or basic, right? If I remember correctly from my days in science. And to me, those 4 questions are looking for 4 different results, like 4 different areas. So it's still those 4 questions are a little bit too broad to kind of help you understand where you sit as a leader.
What would you ask instead?
Oh, I don't know. That's you just threw this at me, Danielle.
Let's think about that, right?
Okay, as you're thinking about that, as an initial testing the waters 4 questions, I actually like them. To me, they're broad enough that people can go in any direction for them. But even as you were asking them, I was thinking to myself, as a leader, how would I answer these questions? And I could see how that could then give me a flavor of, what are the things I like about these answers? What are the things I don't like? What things might I want to change? What things might I feel like, yeah, that is me and I want to be defined as that? But I feel like it's just a starter, like 4 questions to get your juices flowing. There are definitely more and deeper questions to be asking yourself to then figure out truly what is your leadership identity. But as an initial 4, I think they're quite good. They're quite thought-provoking.
When I read it, I think for me what it was is, I think I would apply it, and I think I offer our listeners this. These 4 questions are very broad. They allow you to, at least if you're having any doubt about your leadership identity here's a starting point to start playing with that. Especially if you feel like you're the person that's floating from room to room, meeting to meeting, and you're always leading into whatever's going on in that room in the moment. If your paradigm is, let me do what the group is doing, and you're not comfortable with that, maybe coming back to these 4 questions might be a good way to do at least an initial sense of who am I being.
Yeah, and maybe this litmus test helps you understand what areas you need to focus on in that moment, right? Because it could change, month by month. It could change position by position. It could change organization by organization. Because the one thing we really haven't gotten to yet is the fact that every organization is a little bit different, and we're different leaders in every organization as well. The classic example of working at a startup where you have to be a leader that wears many hats, to working with an organization that's been around for 100 years and things are pretty set in stone how things operate. You're a different leader in those roles as well. So maybe the litmus test is different depending on the organization you're in as well.
Yeah. I also think the litmus test is a conversation starter. I think, Nisha, you mentioned that, right? It is building that awareness as well. Because I think too, where I went through my own identity crisis, I'll put that in quotes, I was going through a variety of personal things as well in the moment. And so when you're stuck in that vortex and you're just executing to end a job, you might not have even the headspace to have that conversation. And we always talk about how coaching can help you unlock these things. But again, there is this idea that you may perceive as a crisis, other people around you won't even see. So it's also just taking that time out for yourself and sitting down and journaling to kind of explore and writing words out, saying them out loud, to really explore what isn't being aligned or what isn't falling into place for you.
As you said that, something came to mind for me, which is it's kind of in the line of journaling, but it's more conversation based. I would say if you have the type of dynamic with your leader to be able to ask the question of, if somebody were to ask you, what is my leadership style? How would you answer them? And getting the feedback, that's the key question. That's the key word here. It's feedback orientated versus having to do the internal journaling aspect of it. And then the other way of that is if you have folks on your team, and I've been fortunate to have this as well, where, I'm a leader, but I have folks that roll into me that I can confide in. They are very open with me. They will tell me when I've done something great. They will also tell me when they don't like the things that I do. But it's going to those leaders that roll into you and asking them the same question and getting that feedback from kind of peripheral people that are close enough to you that can see your leadership style, then can give you something to chew on to say, okay, what did I like of this feedback? What do I not like? What do I want to change? And then that can also fuel your journaling instead of just starting from yourself. And if you're not good with just journaling raw, that could be a good starting point, is to go and get the outward feedback first.
Because a lot of that could just be perception. And so you yourself may not feel that you're in that mannerism that they identified, but you're perceived to be that way. And so you have to figure out, what am I doing that perception exists? Because that's someone's reality about you. And so while you're not going to go change yourself for every other person, but it's good to understand what behavior is triggering that perception. And then maybe addressing the behavior, not necessarily yourself, because you don't want to change who you are. You don't want to change your values, but you can certainly adjust behaviors which aren't coming across favorably, especially if they're coming across detrimental for yourself. You may not realize you're doing these things. And it could be small things, not necessarily large things, right? It's just maybe, I'm guilty of this, showing up to a meeting 2 minutes late. And it could mean that you don't care. Well, you know what? As hard as that is for me, I did adjust and I started showing up for meetings just a minute early just to get the seat I wanted. And what a difference it made. Like I said, tiny little things a lot of times can change people's perceptions about you, which is their reality, which is how they see you as a leader. Because deep down inside, they all know you're a good person, or you're a competent person. Let's put it that way. You're a competent person. You know what you're doing. You're a good leader. But are you that leader that can make it to the next level if that's what you want, or they can count on to be there on time for them, or whatever's missing, right? Whatever's missing.
I like the point you make too, that it's not necessarily, it's not always big things that have to change. I remember very early on in my career as a leader, I got feedback from a peer that said that I can come across very matter of fact, and it comes across as if I'm not willing to carry on the conversation once I've come out and say, okay, guys, like, this is what I'm hearing and this is what it means and this is what we should do about it. And then it kind of just like stonewalled. And they told me, they're like, everybody agrees with you. That's not the thing. It's just, they were like, kind of comes across very matter of fact and as if you're closed off to any further conversation about it. And I was like, ooh, I don't like that. I don't want to be seen that way. And so smallest little adjustment I could make was still, that's my style. My style is to listen to what's happening in the room, summarize it, give it back and be like, okay, is this it, guys? And the problem is I wasn't saying that at the end. And so my small tweak was I would give the lay of the land, and then I would say, did I miss anything? Are we all on the same page? Is there something further we need to consider? Or even simply, what are your thoughts? And that then meant, okay, Misha's still open for discussion here. And so then it started changing that perception of, okay, Misha's matter of fact, she's going to say it and that's it, to, oh no, like she's great at summarizing and then keeps the door open for conversation.
I can say not only did your words change, but your tone changed as well. Even in you telling the story, your tone was different. And I think, and again, those subtle cues of not only the words, but how they come across, tones, intonations. It's amazing these small little changes can speak volumes.
And if you're really motivated as a leader to understand what your identity is out there, you can also actually be brave and say, I want to get a 360 assessment done with HR, and actually ask HR to invest the time to have all of, the participants involved gather feedback about you and then get coached on it. Doesn't really matter where you are on the scale of leadership and how far you've moved up. Your choice and your awareness of this topic can help you take the steps you need, whether it be at a micro level, is what Misha defined, or at a macro level where you actually have a formal 360 assessment done.
Those are all great points, Daniela, and yet it is all really subtle. But sometimes culturally, there are certain behaviors which show up, and that's just the way they operate, because within their culture, within their family, within the environment they grew up in, it's that, you're not spoken to, you don't speak until you're spoken to, you're fighting you're fighting to be heard, so you're maybe louder than other folks. So how do you, as a leader, address those cultural differences that come across? Because we do live in a global world and we work with people from all sorts of different environments and cultures.
I think as a leader, this to me feels like one of those things that you either have to dial up or dial down. So if I'm a leader and I see those cultural cues within my team where there are some folks who won't speak until spoken to, or there are some folks that are just really, really shy, it's paying attention and then saying, hey, Claudia, what do you think about this topic? So speaking directly to them versus expecting them to just naturally chime in, which is more around creating the space for them. And then if I'm in the situation where that is somebody that reports to me, I will start to talk to them about it from a coaching perspective to say, hey, I don't know if you've realized this, but I often will ask you directly, what are your thoughts? And it's because I noticed that you're being quite quiet. And I'd like to understand how you and I can both work on getting you to open up and not need the prompting in our team meetings, because I believe the opinions and, the thoughts that you have are very valuable. And I want you to feel the same way. So how do we work on this together? That's from a team perspective. I think you dial it up the same way if you're in a room with other leaders. So I've had it where I'm in a meeting and it's upward leadership. Okay. It's people that somebody I report to and their peers. But I've noticed that, hey, I really wanted Daniela's perspective, but Daniela hasn't said anything yet as a leader. And so if I have the opportunity, I'll say, hey, Daniela, I would love to understand what your feedback is on what I've presented. And it's the same thing. You can call on a team member the same way you can call on a leader. You just have to have the courage to do that. So I think it's where you kind of dial up as a leader. Now, if you are this type of person who culturally maybe have grown up in a world of I will not speak until spoken to, I need to be invited into the conversation, and you are now the leader, so you're in these leadership meetings and you have that kind of cultural value, that is something to approach your coach or mentor or leader in uncovering, because that's one of those traits that could work against you. If you're pressure prompted and then you speak, that could be perceived negatively. And so it's more of having the self-awareness that, hey, okay, I find myself being really quiet in these meetings, even though I have thoughts, but I just don't know how to come out and say them because that's not what I was raised to be. And it's finding that confidant that you can speak to then help you unpack that and figure out ways that you can start to get involved in conversations naturally without needing the prompting. But you have to seek out that support. It's not a matter of just, okay, well, that's how I grew up and now I'm in a leadership position and that's how I'm going to continue to be, because if you want to progress, it could be something that's going to hold you back. So how do you find the mechanisms to evolve and to grow?
Yeah, if I can add to, because some of the work I've just done recently, I stressed to this team I was working with, I'm a big fan of quiet leadership. Because culturally, some cultures are just a quieter culture, and that's fine. Other cultures are, they have a thinking process where they need to speak out loud in order to get their thoughts across. But I stress the fact that, quiet leaders, people know they're quiet. But when they speak, they know people know that they're speaking because they have something important to say. So being a quiet leader doesn't necessarily mean I don't speak at all. It implies that you've been taking everything in that's been going on around you. You've been forming the ideas and analysis in your head. And now I have something important to say that addresses what we've just been talking about in this room. And so people will listen to a quiet leader because it's not as though they're just thinking out loud or throwing ideas out there. They've actually taken some time and really processed and put together some thoughtful insights. And that's and people go, yeah, that makes sense. Now I get it. So I always emphasize quiet leaders, when they speak, people really do listen.
I love the way both of you have framed that up. I'd also offer to leaders the idea that there are different leadership styles, which we've talked about. Sometimes it's good to kind of play with something that's different from what you naturally gravitate towards. For me, it took me a long time to understand that I'm not an authoritarian or control-based leader. I never have been. It always felt uncomfortable and inauthentic. And I came across a statement called servant leadership, which really aligned with my style, which is prioritizing the needs, growth, and well-being of my team members over my own self-interest. I always say that the most educated leader is the one who explores and tries to find what fits their values. And so don't stop, regardless of whether you come from a sales environment or you're in a high stress environment, let's say, investment banking or any of these other places where you think there is a norm that you have to fit with. You can actually play and explore other leadership styles to see what fits who you are. And the other thing is evolution. There's an evolution in your leadership style. And that's healthy because you're going to be a different person at different parts of your life. When you enter parenthood, you may become a very different type of leader than what you were before parenthood. When you hit a new milestone in terms of the number of people you lead, you will potentially lead with a different type of intention and style. And so also recognize that you can shape and shift, but who you are at your core, that authenticity part of you and your values, stay constant.
Wonderful conversations. Any takeaways from today?
So many takeaways. Oh my God, where do I start? Okay. I think first is a little bit of what we said in our intro. Adaptability is a skill. And I think we've talked a lot about adaptability, maybe not head on indirectly, but indirectly throughout our whole conversation. And the concept of knowing yourself, not losing yourself through that adaptability. But I think for me, one of the big key takeaways here is that, we called it the leadership identity crisis, but crisis can kind of insinuate that it's in your face and super loud. But this is one of those ones that's very quiet. It's very subconscious. It doesn't really boil up to the surface until the pot spills over. And so to me, it sounds like the takeaway is to just tap in to yourself, see if you are experiencing the crises. And if you are, it's going through the variety of things that we talked about to kind of work through it, but also just reminding yourself that just because it's a crisis doesn't mean it has to be, a big mountain to overcome. It can be small things that we do that help to quickly shift that identity or that crisis that you might be in. And the concept of, dialing up or dialing down. It's not this one size fits all leadership identity, it can shapeshift, it can move, it can adjust as long as it stays true to who you are.
That's really well said, Misha. I love the way you've taken the term crisis and kind of broken it down in that summary, which is important because your perceived crisis may not be seen by those around you. As an add-on to that, I'm going to offer a couple of questions for our listeners to helpfully reflect on. What do you stand for? What will you push back against? And I'll add a little add-on, even if it costs you. And what problem do people associate you with solving? Claudia?
I would say what helped me out, and Nina, Misha took a lot of the great points I was going to make, so thank you for that. You summarized it beautifully. But I would just add, maybe have that conversation with yourself. Am I able to support my management going up? Because even me as a leader, I have a leader I report to. Am I able to support my peers? And am I able to support the people that report into me? So have that conversation with yourself and see if you can answer those 3 questions. I think that would be great.
And do you have what you need to support yourself? Thanks for listening to The Coaching Divas. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and follow us on Instagram at The Coaching Divas.
Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone you think would love it.
Until next time, we are
Claudia Jones,
Daniela Velkovic,
and Misha Jethva, The Coaching Divas.
If you're going to coach, might as well coach like a diva.